Hi everyone, welcome to SEAD Society second career workshop. This one will be specifically on CVs and we will follow with another on cover letters, portfolios for applications and time management in the next 3 weeks. So for today's workshop, we will have 6 speakers. So we will begin by Marjolein, who will do a bit of a longer overview of CVs in general, and then we will have another 5 people share their personal CVs and give some tips and comments on them. So let's get right to it.
Okay, so what is a CV? A CV is a short written summary of your skills, achievements, and experiences that relate to the role that you're applying for. It is usually the first step when applying for a job, and the CV is usually asked in combination with, for example, exam questions that they have prepared or like essay questions, and it's the first chance really to promote yourself to an employer. Next slide. Lina, can you do the next slide, please? So what really is the key of a CV? In like the most abstract way of thinking about it, employers want to make a profit, and what the CV should really show are the skills and the achievements that you have, which are going to help them generate that. And you should therefore be as concise as possible and really outline the bullet points that really generate this. So what is really important before starting to write a CV is to see what kind of job description, what they're kind of looking for. So this is a website in general that talks about different kinds of jobs and usually what they're kind of looking for. But it's always really important to look at the job advert where you found where you're going to do the internship or where the job is registered and see what the job description is, what the person specifications are and the company details, and how this kind of matches with your own skills and experiences. So you should really list your qualifications of your past jobs, volunteering experiences, your past employer details, and evidences of training courses you've completed. And it's pretty handy to have these things just in a Word document so you can kind of use these elements in any type of CV for different companies you're writing. There are different types of CVs, and it kind of depends on what you're applying for, how qualified you are, which type of CV you're using, but the main ones are outlined here. So you have the traditional CV or the chronological CV, which really lists your work, your educational history, starting with the most recent. Then you have a skill-based or target CV, which is usually something used in finance, which focuses on your job-related skills and your personal qualities. And this is usually backed up with evidences of your experiences. And then you have a technical CV used in professions like IT and engineering, and it highlights the skills that are important in your industry, which are backed up with the experiences. Then you have a creative CV, which is a creative in digital arts and can link to an online portfolio that you have of the work that you've been doing, and contains video or infographics, includes digital tools. And then you have an academic CV, which is generally longer and which is more for teaching, which is kind of irrelevant here. And your CV should be no more than 2 pages of an A4, but it is recommended to have one side of A4, definitely when you're applying in the UK. Next slide. So at the start of your CV, you really want to tell who you are, how they can contact you. So what's really important is to add your name, phone number, email address, and maybe have a link to to LinkedIn or anything that is a professional networking profile for you. And you should not include your age, date of birth, marital status, or nationality. That's not very necessary here. Then in the next stage, you talk about yourself, and this is really the only time that you it depends a bit on what you're applying for, but this is usually the only time that you really talk about yourself in relationship to the job, which is just a few short lines at the beginning of your CV where you sum up who you are and what you hope to do and what you hope to achieve within the role. It should go under your name and contact details, and you should think about the job you want and what the employer is looking for. So you should market yourself according to the job description. And then you usually talk about your educational history. It depends if this is your third step, or sometimes it comes at the end of the CV, depending on which type of CV layout you're using, but most commonly it's the third step you talk about. And you add this section after your personal profile, and you add the names of your qualifications. including the school or college or university where you've graduated, where you've done it, and the dates you attended. And if you're older and you have several jobs, you might want to just change the order and do the work history and skills first. And then we talk about work history. I mean, the more you've done, obviously, the bigger and more important this will be. But you should include placements, projects, part-time jobs, internships, and volunteering, and any jobs you've had. It's important to focus more on the internships, volunteering, jobs, projects at this stage, because probably most people won't have had several jobs. But it's important to add the employer details, job title, dates, and what you did. You should use active words. This also really depends on who you're writing the CV for, which will be shown in the examples later on. But sometimes after you've explained what work you've done, underneath you write a couple of sentences just explaining what you've used, what skills you've gained from that experience. And these skills should obviously relate to the job you're applying to. It's really important here to use active words like organize, create, build, manage, planned, and to give a positive example of your achievement. And way that you can do this is using the STAR method. And the STAR method really includes, you talk about the situation you had to deal with in the thing you've done, the task that you were given, the action that you took, what happened. This is where you use the active words, and the results of your action and what you've learned and what you've taken from this. It's important to add this definitely when your CV will go through an algorithm, definitely when you are applying to see like jobs that have a lot of applications. Many of the CVs will first be run through an algorithm, and this algorithm usually looks for active words. So it's really important here to add as many active words related to your job as possible, so that the algorithm won't get you out of the system just because it doesn't recognize those words. Then we sometimes talk, if you don't really have a lot to say, or your CV is still pretty preliminary, it's important to talk about your hobbies and interests, and to try and to go through your hobbies and interests and focus on the relevant skills. This is a CV and it is useful, and what is kind of important here is that, for example, if you've done a team sport, you, for example, played hockey, and you're going to apply for something that has a lot of team spirit, team efforts, it's important to mention these things, definitely if you don't have a lot of other things to show. Then at the end, there are references usually where you can talk about if the recruiter wants to have more evidence of what you've been doing, that they can contact this person. But you can also write references are available on request, and then the recruiter can always ask you about it in the next stage if you are able to get through. Then some things to remember is that in different countries and different companies have different CV requirements. Therefore, I recommend having a Word document with all your information, all the things you've done, all the skills you have learned from those things. So you can just copy and paste it and tailor your CV to whoever you're applying to and wherever you're applying to. For places with a lot of applicants, which I've kind of already said before, they're algorithms, so use a lot of adjectives. And you should really highlight your skills. And in certain algorithms will also look for different programs or different things that you know. So for example, if you are really good in Rhino, mention that you're really good in Rhino. If you're really good in Photoshop, mention that you're really good in Photoshop, so that these things are also seen. If you're in a really big hurry, there are CV generator websites, which are, for example, SEAD, Life Career, or Novo Resume. And these are just great websites that can also help you with mentioning the skills that you learn from a certain thing. For example, Zeti, if you say, like, I've done this, it will highlight the skills that you could have taken from it, and you can just select which ones you have, and this saves a lot of time. And then in total, like, I kind of summed up everything. So you should research. You should start by researching the company and job. Then you should choose a CV style. Use a clear font like Arial or Times. Have a size 11 or bigger so that's easily read. Use headings, bullet points as spacings, also because it's easily read, and make it clear, preferably one-sided A4. And you should always let it be proofread and save a backup and send it in PDF format.
Thank you so much, Marlene. That was it for the general overview, and now we'll proceed with the next 5 speakers, each showing their personal CV and kind of give some tips and explain what they did and how they created it. So I'll begin with my own now. This is my current CV. This is what I've been sending out when I've been applying to internships this year. I think I last updated it in January, so like a month ago. It's important to constantly be updating it with new experiences and new information about yourself. As Marilyn mentioned, there are some websites that you can use to make CVs. That's what I've been using. I've been using Live Career, which is one of the 3 that she mentioned. I think I paid something like £10 to have access for it. I don't know if it's lifetime access or a year or something. But since I'm not applying to very like creative architectural internships, I didn't think it was too important for me to have a very fancy looking and very like stylish CV, which is easier to achieve when you do your own template or like you do it yourself on Illustrator or something like that. So for me, it was more like I just needed it to look clean. I needed to have the different sections, and this website kind of like generates it for you, but like I still write all the text. It's just that you still write all the text, but the website kind of generates the whole thing for you, and then you can export it as a PDF, as Marilyn said, and send that around. So it has pretty much all of the sections that she mentioned. It's got a summary of me, a little picture of me, which is very like, a lot of people will not put a picture of themselves. I quite like having a photo, and I stick to that. I know how Marilyn was saying not to put your age, nationality, sometimes not even gender or photo or stuff like that. I'm personally not a big fan of this, because if a company is going to reject me because I'm Eastern European and female, then I don't want to be working for that company. So I'd rather have that out there. But of course, that's personal preference. A lot of people will be omitting a lot of those details. So then it's got my contact information on the right hand side after my picture, some skills, areas of knowledge, which is kind of to mention the different things we study on our program without necessarily just listing all modules. Then it's got a bit substantially bigger section on languages, because I speak a lot of languages and that's something that's quite important to me. So there's also, of course, a lot of thinking about the space allocation, because as Marilyn said, you're not required, but it's better to do just one-sided A4. So in a one-page A4, you can't fit that much information. And maybe for now, if you're in year 1 or 2, maybe you can fit all of your experiences and everything about yourself. But it's going to come to a point where definitely maybe in like 1 or 2 years for you guys, it's already come for me, that I can't fit all my experiences on one page. So there's a moment when you need to kind of go through everything you've done, choose which things are really important, either for a specific job or just in general, which things show better your experiences. If you have multiple things that show the exact same skill, maybe you choose one of them. At some point, it's not so much important what clubs you did in high school or like what award you got on your GCSEs or something. It's much more important what kind of extracurricular project you got involved with this year or last year, rather than something you did 6 years ago. So of course you start to omit some things, and then you have to think a lot about how much space you give to different things. So as I said, I gave a bit of space to languages because it's quite important to me. I gave some space to a summary. Then there's the typical education, so my high school and university education. And then how I separated it was into experiences and extracurriculars, where in experiences I put everything that was internship or volunteering, which I consider equally as important, because I've done construction volunteering, so it's quite relevant, and I think I learned as much from it that as I learned from my internship. And then I've got an ongoing job that I've had for over a year, so this is quite important to me. I've put that as well. So for each, I've put what the company was or is, the dates that I worked at, the location of it, and then a short 1 or 2 sentences explaining what I did or what happened, what was my role, etc. And then in extracurricular, I've put everything like president of society's career lead in SEAD, then some transition mentor experience, student rep experience, and kind of stuff like that, which I think is still very valuable, and I've consecrated a lot of space to it, but it's still less important than the more like formal experiences that I've had. So I've put those on top. And yeah, it's kind of like a lot about how you manage it. So yeah, for me, it's you'll see compared to other people's, it's quite clean. It's just on a white page. There's very little color, very little like fancy graphics and showing other than for the languages. So it's quite textual, but also it's not big chunks of text. It's still quite concise. And I think it's rather clear, but I actually have to rework it this month because I've got new experiences to add, and I might need to rethink how I've done it because there might not be enough space now. So yeah, this is my experience with CVs. This is my current CV, and I'll pass on to Elisa. Right, I
Hi,
think we'll come
ma'am.
back to. Oh, are you
Wait,
here? Great.
sorry, I had to get out of a quick meeting.
So, no worries.
Okay, but like, I assume you guys kind of have talked about the main things, but essentially, what I put on this slide is my old CV, and you guys can kind of see it's a bit, and that's the one on the left, and it's a bit like wonky. It's not got, it's got a lot of colors. It's very like text heavy, and so quite recently I've actually changed it to look more like the one on the right. And so I think a few of the tips that I would give for the CV stuff is that the first thing you want to do is kind of put like your education first. I don't know if you covered this already, but yeah, put like because before I had all of my experiences first. Underneath like a profile, I had like my experiences, and I talked to a couple of architects, and they said actually don't do that because all of the experiences until now that you've had, because I had a couple of internships, but they weren't necessarily related to architecture or engineering. They said put the actual education, like the program that you're doing first before your experiences, because that's the most important thing. That's the thing that makes you kind of most interesting to the employers, the fact that you are doing this integrated design course. And then again, like try and keep everything like really simple, really succinct, and put the dates of when you did the internships. So right, yeah, like as you can see, I have the profile, my education, all the experiences that I think were relevant. So I've done a few other things, but I just didn't think they needed to know. They're like working in the forestry, and I didn't really think they needed to know that in a CV because, of course, you want to keep it really short. And then underneath, I have all the skills, and I decided this time to like color code as well, like kind of the level of each skill that I kind of have, just to kind of give an idea. And obviously, like guys, it doesn't really have to be like true to what you actually know. I think some things I've said, oh yeah, I can definitely do this, while maybe I'm more like I've used this like once or twice and I kind of know. But of course it's more like saying you've used the program and you can easily like regain that knowledge if you were to start this again. And they ask you specifically for some programs, they definitely know that you know how to use it and you can easily regain all of those skills very fast. And you also want to include like soft skills specifically, like I guess leadership, time management, or at least, well, that's what I've kind of seen. If you see that your CV starts getting really text heavy, then you don't have to. And then underneath all of this, I also have the languages I speak and kind of to what level. And I kind of made a little visual thing again to kind of keep it, to kind of create a bit of dynamic kind of vibe in the CV and not just have text. It's a different style to what some people do. For example, if you see like a business related CV, it's going to be like just text, and that's completely fine. But I think I wanted to have a little bit something more architectural. So that's why I kind of gave a little bit of color and a little bit more visual kind of symbols. And then, yeah, I have my past education and just like some achievements that I thought were interesting to show. But yeah, anyways, like the four kind of points I would say for you guys, like tips, are definitely like put your education first. So this program, what you're doing, put the hyperlinks, because I think like putting hyperlinks to stuff is actually a really useful way of like people just being able to quickly access and see what you're actually talking about. So for example, right, you want to expect that the person reading your CV has no idea of your program and has no idea or like understanding potentially of the internships you've done or like experiences you've had. So if you include a hyperlink there when you mention that experience, or you mention that that internship you've done, or the course, if you have the hyperlink, they can quickly see what you're talking about and how cool it actually is. Because if you like, for example, I have one right underneath the program, like the Meng program, and I have a link to the actual description of the Meng program, so that they can actually see like to what level this is a very good program and stuff. As well, I have a link to my LinkedIn page and just my email as well. So I think hyperlinks are really like good, quick tool to just help add more information to your CV without adding more text, if that makes sense. And then obviously the third tip is like keep it really short as much as you can. You have to really imagine that someone reading this, and I always like think of the perspective of someone reading this. That person is gonna have maybe like 20 or plus CVs to read in one go. They're not gonna be looking at the details that much, to be honest. They're gonna be looking at they're going to prefer most likely like CVs that have the most important information first, the most relevant information first, easy to read, clean, and like easy to look at, to understand. So you want to make sure that you're always kind of thinking in that perspective and keeping everything short and succinct, so getting your point across fast, kind of thing, because the people reading this again are not going to have that much time. So like, yeah, the third tip is kind of like keep it text heavy, but also like think through the eye of who's looking, who's the employer. They're not going to have a lot of time. And I think the fourth thing was just like yeah, if you want to have like some visual cues, I think it helps kind of keep the CV again less text heavy and quite simple. But again, guys, like just to kind of finish off this kind of long-winded explanation, there's so many ways to make CVs. There's so many, and I guess there's no real right or wrong way. I think it's always more just like kind of making sure that whatever you do, it's to the point and it's legible, and you're kind of trying to get through the most relevant bits of information, because at the end of the day, those like small details, they're not going to remember them if they're on the CV, and you can always, if you get through to the interview stage, then you can explain it in an interview stage. But yeah, so that's my part done. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Guess that's a no.
Thank you, Lisa. I think if there are any questions, we'll keep that to the end.
Yeah, okay,
But
perfect.
we'll see as we're recording everything. Right. Thank you so much. And then
No
we'll go
worries.
ahead to Gabe.
Hey everyone, I'm Gabe, so I'm in third year, and this is my CV that I've kind of like half updated for this year, but I'm not quite finished it. But this is basically what I used for second year to look for an internship in the summer. So a few things to point out. I agree with like what the past couple people said, like definitely putting your education like at the top is like super important, I think. So actually saying what our course is, because lots of people actually don't know, and I found that kind of when I did like my interview and stuff, that was something that was like super interesting for them. So like them being like, oh, what is your course, but so yeah, that was like one key bit. So kind of I described a little bit what it was. I also don't have that many like experiences or achievements compared to lots of people's CVs, but I think that's kind of okay too. Like I kind of just put in a few bits which I thought were most relevant. Again, like similar to the other people, was like the most important stuff was like close to the top. And then things that are like less important go down the list. This might need like rejigging, and I feel like in this CV as well, there's probably too many words too. So like I've kind of gone a little bit paragraph format. But I think it's okay that it's a little bit more sort of personal. And then I've also put in a drawing that I've done in the background of the CV just to kind of spice it up a little bit, and just to note that I'm only applying for like architecture internships, or work experience. Like I'm not applying for any engineering, so like I think that would kind of differ how like these things look. A few other things to note is kind of just sort of formatting. Like I think it's really nice to split the page into like a quarter and 3/4. Just helps you like distinguish the key elements a little bit more. And for example, I've used like the same style of like all capitals for like education, skills, achievements, and experiences. And then things that are slightly less important, like the about or goals section, is in like a slightly different format. But I also think it's quite nice to have a goals section too. Don't know how everyone else feels about this, but like for this, I just put a little bit about what I want, you know. And I feel like they picked up on that in my interview. And also the hobbies section is like, I get a lot of stick for putting hobbies in, but it was something that they also picked up on in my interview. Like the main bits they talked about in regards to my CV was the fact that I was at like UCL Surf Club as a treasurer and the hobby section, and they were like, it's so cool that you do these things outside of architecture as well, and like they liked it. And I think it's nice to have like this like document a little bit more personal than just kind of like step by step. These are all the boxes I tick, you know. So like I talk in like the first person in my about section. So yeah, just like a few other little touches. I'm just trying to think if there's like anything else I could touch up on. That's basically it, I think, from me. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing, Gabe.
No
We'll
worries.
go ahead to Bartosz.
Hey, hi everyone. Most of the aspects that other people mentioned before are 100% valid, and please take a look at that. But for me, one of the most important things is first deciding why you're making CV. So, as for example, Gabe mentioned, like he was looking for architectural internships. That's why he put his architectural drawing in the background. That's in my eyes, this is something great. It's amazing. But first thing, are you going to apply for the big companies when you're going to submit your CV and probably it's going to go for the algorithm? Or are you going to go and like give your CV to someone in person and make this kind of connection with the other person, how they're going to look at it? Is there going to be a human eye or algorithm looking at it? So that's really important to distinguish first. Second thing, I feel like there is not a single good CV without this small pinch, something that makes it stand out. So like for me, I, for example, made the background black. Like it's really simple, small thing, but if you look for like 100 CVs, for example, and there is one CV black, you will naturally like just take a look at this a bit more. It will stand out from the other. If you do it too much, it will just look wrong. You should not try to make yourself stand out too much, but if it's a bit, then that's kind of your sweet spot that you're trying to hit. I really like the fact that you show those information, show your skills in kind of quantified way a bit. Of course, no one is going to expect from you to actually give you everything that you're going to show in your CV, but even by, for example, those scale bars that I added under my skill section, or some people do the circles, there's so many ways that you can do it. But this kind of shows your priorities. For example, I was applying to the parametric design firm, and for me, Grasshopper is something that I absolutely love. I use all the time. This is amazing tool, recommend to everyone. But this is the thing that I put as the highest skill that I have. And when you look at the whole page, you don't need to read if it's advanced, if it's not. If you just have a text, nothing else, and all the skills become kind of as important. There's nothing that stands out from this. And here there is the grasshopper part. I don't know. I believe that this is one of the things that made me go there, because they were really heavily in the studio that I applied in. really, really heavily focus on Grasshopper. The other thing from that wasn't mentioned before is the kind of the chronological timeline. I believe that, of course, you should take a look at the stuff and put the most recent stuff at the top, but you also have to make sure that it's beneficial for you that you do so. If you're going to lose something on the fact that you're putting the most recent stuff, for example, from the work experience, my work experience session, if you're going to lose anything on putting something that you were working recently on the top, I think that's not something that you should go for. For example, I was an event entertainer and I was hosting bachelor's parties, but I don't think that this is as important as the architectural assistant intern and a building site engineer assistant. I just don't see this being on the top of the CV. So even though I was working there as my most recent, I pushed all the other aspects on the top of that. And I feel like that's pretty much everything was mentioned. Just try to make it clear, just try to make it concise, give all the most important information that you can, and try to create some sort of a hierarchy in this information that you're showing. So if you're showing the skills, I'm not the biggest fan of the block of text for the skills because it just doesn't show your personality in the way. And if you can in any way try to stand out, do it. Just don't push it too far.
Thank you so much, Bartosz. We'll go ahead with our last presenter today, and that's Malena.
Hello, everyone. So just adding a bit on top of what my colleagues said, because I think they mainly went over everything. I think the most important thing is to especially right now, because we're moving from high school to university, we are doing internships. We have different roles at different committees at uni. We are doing different extracurriculars. It's important to sort of come back to it maybe once or twice a year at least and update it, because there's many things going on. And there's many things that you probably wrote in your CV that are not really going to be relevant to whichever thing you're applying to. As an example, because I've been updating mine twice or three times a year in the past 5 years. You can see here the one that I had last year, which is before I did over the summer to architecture internships. So it's the one where I applied to those internships, and the one that I have right now. And there's many things that I always even if they were important at some point, right now they are not relevant. And I think that the most important thing is to keep it concise, even if you're not saying all the information, because if they are just interested with you, they will be with the main things that you have in your CV. And then whenever you have an interview or in your cover letter, or if they click to see your website, or if you have a reference, they will get to know you better through many other things. So just keep the most important thing in your CV, which is education, any experience that you might have, internships, volunteering, or any previous working experience, even if it's not related with architecture. At least in my case, working even as a flight attendant, it was a nice thing to put in the CV, and people like that when I applied to other jobs. So even if it's not related to architecture, if you have some previous working experience, add that. And then maybe some extracurriculars that you might have, 1 or 2 roles, but don't put more things because they are just not going to read it. They would appreciate much more if you have a very short CV. Obviously, don't go more than 1 page, A4, that's the maximum, I used to have more and then I just took it out, and it's so much better, it's better to have less and high quality than a lot and not that much quality, you know what I mean? So in mine, well, in the current one, the year 3 one on the right, I just have a link to my website, to my YouTube channel, email, phone number, where do I live. I might have to update it and add just a link to LinkedIn, because that, at least in architecture, I think that it's a very useful platform and people would appreciate that, and perhaps have in my LinkedIn a paragraph about me. I don't really put it in the CV, because whenever I apply to somewhere, I always write a cover letter, and that's where I maybe speak about me a bit, or in my LinkedIn profile. I don't necessarily think it's really relevant to put it in the CV. And then languages, I mainly have the ones that I'm most fluent, like English, Spanish, and Catalan, which are my native ones. I'm not very sure if I should like keep the French one or not. You know, as I said, like I speak a bit of French. It's not that much, so maybe it's better to not add it than to add it, you know. Just keep in mind those sort of questions. And then my key skills, which if you are applying for an architecture internship, or as Bartosz said before, you know, like for him, it was really important to show like the working office where he was applying, that he was good at like parametric things, you know, so that was a main thing in his CV. In our case, especially because we are in architecture, Rhino and Grasshopper are very important usually, Adobe, and then you can add like physical modeling. In my case, I add Final Cut Pro because I love doing videos and films. That's from the YouTube comes from. So special touch that you might have, you know, moreover like the main things that your course might have. It's always nice to add. And then some expertise, like key points, as Marjolaine mentioned at the beginning, that are just to like make your CV go through this like algorithm, you know. Usually people are interested in like team-oriented people, driven mindset people, people that learn quickly. In my case, I also added like customer service because I was like a whole summer just doing coffee for other people. And I think that even if it's not that relevant for like architecture jobs, it's important to let them know that you have already been like working with like in public, you know, like speaking to other people, that you have like that social part, because maybe you don't think it's relevant, but in architecture you're going to eventually like work with a lot of people constantly, and it's always nice to let people know that you're someone that is comfortable in like social environments, like communicating with people. Those are actually really important skills, so just add them. And yeah, just like management flexibility, not that relevant. And then I think really important part is the referees part. I don't know if my colleagues had that in their CVs. This is something that actually a tutor from UCL told me, and so I just started putting, which is you know, we will go in depth with the recommendation letters in the next workshops, but especially in our case, it's really important, like the recommendation letters and what our tutors talk about us when we apply. And it's really important that you pull from the string the fact that we are at the Bartlett and there's really like important people from the architecture world at the Bartlett right now. So just put those strings, because if these people reference you, you know, if these people wrote your recommendation letters, it's always going to help you like more. So like make use of that in a good way. In my case, I started last year with Oliver and Graham because they were my design tutors, the architecture ones, and they were the ones that wrote recommendation letters whenever I applied to jobs over the summers from the first year and the second year. So this is just a way in which maybe you have a recommendation letter and you are applying with it. Maybe you don't. It always depends on the job, but the referees are so that people like write them an email and that the referees like send them automatically like your recommendation letter, or sort of like recommend you to them, you know. So now I also added Sean because he's my design tutor this year. Of course, I always do that with their permission, you know, or because I already like asked them a recommendation letter so that they are aware that they are in my CV, you know what I mean. um and then, yeah, education. In my case, I think it was really important for the architecture jobs to add like the models that we are having, you know, that we are learning. Things like design practice, mathematics, material mechanics, and making. Last year, I also like wrote the sort of grade that I got on them. I don't think it's that relevant, and maybe I might take this out if I apply to something this year. But it's important that people know the models that you've been doing, because that's relevant for the internships that you're going to do. And then latest experience, I just added like architecture summer experiences, and then like a previous like job. I had many other things, like you can see in the year 2 one, like I created videos with this company over the summer. I was also a transition mentor. I created also videos for like a department at UCL, but those are things that I don't feel they are that irrelevant right now. So even if I spend my time on them and I have experience in them, I am not adding this. Before year 2, my CV had things like, for example, that I was a babysitter, or that there was like more things, but like I started getting those out. Even if I feel that they are part of my experience and they are relevant to me, they are not relevant from when you are applying, and it's better if you like bring those things up while you are having an interview than putting them here, you know what I mean? And then in extracurriculars, that's where I wrote like the different committees where I'm at UCL. Yeah, I wrote that I was a transition program mentor, and that I was like editing videos for UCL, but that's mainly because they were like jobs related with university. But like any other things that I had at the back, I didn't really add those. Like for example, you can see in the year 2 one, I'm also like, as a hobby, I'm a scuba diver, and I think that's relevant, but maybe I might come out with that while I'm in the interview, you know, or like the fact that I'm like practicing kickboxing. But I think it's nice to add it to the CV, but just keep it short, you know, like don't put more sections. It's enough like this, you know what I mean? And yeah, just it's important again, like as Elisa said, to add links. Like if you have a website, if you have a portfolio, to your LinkedIn page, to their YouTube channel, they will click on it if they are interested. And yes, the shorter you keep it, the better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Malena. So that marks the end of all the CV information that we're sharing with you guys today. If we have any questions from anyone who's currently in the meeting, those can be asked now. Just unmute yourself and ask.
I have a question.
Oh, great.
You people are talking about algorithms. Can you explain what that's about, please?
Yeah, so
When you
I'm gonna
apply, oh,
let's
sorry.
have Marlene say that. Yeah, no,
When
go
you
ahead.
apply to like a big company, usually when there's like more than 5,000 applicants, like the people from HR are not going to read them all individually. So what they do, they usually have a program where they put every CV through, which looks at like adjectives, certain like keywords that the company finds really important. And CVs that don't have those words will automatically not be read by HR. And this is kind of their first filtering process to not have to read like thousands of CVs and thousands of people's like work. I mean, there are companies also that usually when you apply to these big firms, what they also have is like an exam and like essay questions, which are also only read by algorithms, which already sort you. But if there's still a lot of people left, your CV will also most likely go through an algorithm.
Okay. Wow. That's pretty sad.
Yeah.
But also kind of like, I don't know, maybe it's a bit stupid, but it's important I mention that like you never should apply with the CV as PNG. Like never ever, because if you ever apply with CV as PNG, any algorithm, if it's going to be the CV is going to put through the algorithm, it will just not recognize any single word, any single keyword, just nothing. It always have to be PDF if you're applying to any companies like that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Actually,
I have a question.
oh, sorry.
Is that okay?
No, I just wanted to add, like, if you know that your thing is going to go through an algorithm, I think you should add more text than the example shown, because it's like not automatically read by someone. And the algorithm is not going to be like, oh, it looks so nice or it looks so clean. It's just going to be like, is it there or not? So I think in those cases, having a more meaty CV, I would recommend.
Okay, can I ask now my question? Is that good? Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just wondering, one sec. Yeah, so I was just wondering because a lot of you guys have like specific disciplines that you've decided you're applying for, right? But if you're still kind of applying more broadly, do you guys have multiple like separate CVs emphasizing different parts and like different aspects? Like, for example, consulting, very different from engineering, from architecture, etc. Or is it kind of one blanket CV that you use for everything?
If I can answer that, I used to do that, especially while I was like working on my summers at high school or during the first year at uni. I did have maybe like 3 of them, and each of them was like more oriented to like specific things. Now, no, because I'm like only focused on like architecture internships. But if I would be like maybe like structures or like architecture, of course they might differ a bit because these sort of people might be interested in different things. Maybe if it's just like changing the order of your key skills of like first writing Adobe instead of Grasshopper, you know, or the other way around, or like any like of your models that you want to write down, like just writing the design ones or the structure or environmental ones. Yes, I do that. It's always nicer for them to read it in that way.
I mean, for me, I have, because I'm applying to different countries as well. So like CVs are different for countries as well. What I do, I have a big Word doc with literally everything I could possibly write about all my experiences, all my academic stuff. And then according to what I'm applying for, I just put certain things in the CV. So this is why I use like a CV generating like website. So I can just copy and paste certain things in and it will just format it according to what I'm applying to, which makes it a lot simpler and which also makes it easy to like go like, oh, I'm going to apply to fintech or like finance, which are kind of have different emphasis.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just to add to this, definitely agree with what Marlene is saying about using the CV generators if you're really making like 5, 6 different ones. Because as Marlena said, it's good to change it 2, 3 times per year. If you have a really complicated Illustrator thing where you just start losing stuff and start bickering over like, is this rectangle gonna be like 20 millimeters or 26 millimeters long or stupid stuff like that, it's you're just going to waste so much time, and especially if you're making one for architecture, one for finance, one for fintech, one for product design, one for engineering, one for whatever. I think it's just too much effort on it when it's not necessarily going to change that much. And also the other thing is most of us probably don't have that many experience. Like I only have one CV, which is also because I'm mostly applying to one type of thing, not necessarily. But if I were to make 3 different ones, they would barely be any different because I just don't have, like, I don't have 20 experiences to choose 3 from. Like if I had 20 separate experiences and each time I were to choose 3 or 4 from them, of course it would be much more different. But given that I already have like 5 experiences or so, it's really just not going to be that different whether I try to tailor it for architecture, I try to tailor it for engineering. There's just not that much to tailor given that I've just not got that much experience. So yeah, it might be a good thing to have separate ones if your CV would be very different. Yes. If it's not that different, maybe it's not just worth spending so much time on that, and it's better to dedicate like an hour or so to just write a nice cover letter for this very like more which is much more specific to the job, where the CV is expected to be more generic. And I see you're asking, Arita, you're asking on the group chat, which are the CV generators. I think, was it here? Yeah. And this slide, Marilyn shared ZE Live Career and Novo Resume. I'm using Live Career, so that's what you can make with Live Career. They've just got, there's some that are like, ZE is more like you enter your experience and it does kind of for yourself, figuring out what skills you might have got from that. The one that I'm using, Live Career, is not like that. You manually enter every piece of text that is appearing, I manually wrote, but it just kind of asks you like, add a section on summary, add a section of education, add a section for contact, add a section for skills. They've got a list of sections, and then you can take a whole section and move them around and just kind of arrange it, which makes it much quicker and easier than doing an Illustrator or in Designer or wherever people are doing it. So yeah.
If I can add something to that, I did mine in Pages, which is like the Word, but documents, but for Apple. Maybe if I would like start doing it now, I would do it in InDesign, but not gonna lie, it's not that difficult to make, you know. And if you are like constantly updating and just changing it, I don't know, I don't think it might take you more like half or one day, you know. And if you do it like in InDesign or even in any other program, like if you do it by yourself, you can always add like a personal touch, like the drawing that Gabe had at the back, or just like keep it concise, you know, with whatever font you want or things. So I don't know. I think it's nicer if you do it, just because I don't think it would take a lot of time. But of course, like everyone is more comfortable in their own way.
Yes, Clara, just unmute yourself.
Hi. I had a question actually, because actually your CV sparked an interesting question, because about the picture, because I always thought originally that on CVs, like, oh, you should have a picture of yourself so that they can recognize you. But then when I did some more research, it showed that like sometimes people, like, it's a controversial thing to have a CV on a picture on a CV, because some people think you shouldn't put one, some people think you should put one. What's kind of the general consensus for you guys? What do you think? Like, is a picture a no-go, or like, I don't know. On my CV,
Yeah,
I
I'm
haven't
gonna
put a
say,
picture. So
yeah,
I don't
sure.
know.
I'm gonna say quickly my personal take, because I think mine was the only one with the picture, and I already mentioned that a bit. But for me, it's like definitely the general take, and from what I've seen and from the amount of other people's CVs I've seen, people generally don't put a picture. I personally think it's nice. I think it has, especially for like also what Bartosz was mentioning, like sometimes you'll like physically print your CV and go and give it to people. I think it's really nice. I think it helps it look, the whole thing be more identifiable with me. Same as on my LinkedIn profile, I've got a picture of me on like anywhere, even though LinkedIn is meant for work and for work related networking, it's still got a picture of me. I don't see why I wouldn't have one on the CV. Now, the main reasons why you wouldn't is, first of all, that it takes up space when you've only got one page A4, which for me is not an issue. Or like at least I've decided it's not an issue, and I'd rather give some space to that. I quite like how it looks and it's more identifiable with me. And then the other thing, which is related to just usually a lot of people will try to not necessarily hide, but people will not want to put their race, their gender, their age, etc. Like in nowhere in your CV, like from my CV, you can tell that I'm a Caucasian female in my early 20s, probably because of the picture. If I hadn't had a picture, you can't tell if I'm 19, which I am, or if I'm 25, really, or you can't tell, like, really, even just from my name, given if it's not okay, from mine you can tell, because you can tell from my family name, because it's a Eastern European family name, you can tell that it's female. But for a lot of people, you can't even tell the gender of the person by looking at their CV. So there's a lot of people who will not add stuff like that because they don't want an employer to make a decision whether to employ them based on their gender, race, any type of other identity, or the way they look, or like if someone's got a lot of piercings or that face tattoos or anything like that. That's what I've heard from people as to why they don't want to put that kind of information, because a photo obviously gives a lot of that away. And what I said also when I was showing my CV is, to me, if someone is going to decide to not employ me because I'm Eastern European female, then I just don't want to work for them. If that's what's going to make them not employ me, I just don't want to work for them anyways. And they're eventually going to find out what I look like at an interview. So I don't see why I would be hiding it. And then it's just a question of how you like it. And I personally like it better with a photo. And then that's why I've chosen. But maybe, yeah, someone else can say why they've not got a photo.
Yeah, if I can just add something to that, I actually used to have my picture in all my CVs always till like a couple of years ago, and then I just decided to remove it. Main reason is if they want a picture of you, they will ask for it. In both of the internships that I did last year, on one of the application portals, I was uploading the CV, cover letter, internship portfolio. They might even like ask for other things like some plan or like physical model, but one of the sections was a picture of you. And in the other one, it was an open application and they got back to me with their own form that had a picture. So if they want a picture of you, they will ask for it, you know, and they will, as Ina said, like they will eventually know how you look in an interview, or they can just click your LinkedIn profile, and in your profile, you usually have your picture. So for me, it's more as I think personally, it's just my opinion, okay? But I think it's more professional to not add your picture, because you should it like the way that you look or how you are, it's nothing related at all with the fact of why would they take you, you know. Again, like I don't want to apply to a place and that because I'm a female or like how the way I look, you know, or whatever, they won't take me. And I always take it out, like if you want to look at me, like invite me to an interview and you will see me there. um but for me, it's more like in terms, it's for professionalism, to keep it concise. And because if they want a picture of me, they will ask it, because they've always been doing that, you know. I think in the world generally, it's more professional if you don't add it. But it always depends on personal preference, and having a picture or not having a picture in your CV, I don't think it will really like matter in terms of getting accepted somewhere or not, you know.
Okay, thank you.
If I can add some to that, I'm not sure I agree with Malena and Nina. Of course, I don't have much experience over that, but from what I was talking to people and from what I was reading when I was applying to different places, you have to check how on what the culture is in the country that you're applying to, because several countries it will be really common to add a picture because it shows you that you're friendly, outgoing, and all of those stuff. But there are several cultures that people are really, really strongly pushing on equality, and they're really strongly, really, really worried about being no, maybe not sued, but accused of not being really fair in the way that they're taking up like applicants. So if someone has a CV with a picture, they might not reject you because you are a woman or because you're Eastern European or because any other aspect of that. They might reject you because you have a picture straight away. This reason only. Because you have a picture, they're going to decide that, okay, if they have a picture and we are going to choose them at the end, someone might say that, oh yes, but this person allowed this person to work there because they are pretty, because they are like this, because they're a woman, because they're whatever. So whenever they got those information, they prefer straight away make a first filter of getting rid of the people with the pictures, for example, because they're just want to make sure that they're not going to be in any way bothered by anyone telling them and accusing them of anything like that. So this is also something to keep in mind, because this is kind of the double-edged sword of Ina saying that she is trying to filter companies through putting picture, because if someone doesn't want her, then she doesn't want them. But maybe someone will not give you a chance if you're putting this picture. Of course, that really depends on the place that you're applying to and the place in even the country where you're applying to.
Yeah,
that's what
just
I
a
have
quick
read.
comment to that. Like, it's always safe to not put it. And then, like, as Bartos said, check maybe the country or the culture of the company, and if they put it, then add it. But it's just like as a standard way, it's safer to not put it, I'd say. That's it.
Yeah, definitely agree, and it's makes a lot of sense. And then again, it's a matter of personal preference. And to me, is also even to what Bartosz is saying, that they might reject you just for the fact that you've put a picture. Again, for me, if a company decides to disregard all my good qualities and rejects me just for the fact that I've put a picture, unless they had specifically said on their application, like, please don't put pictures. If they are going to reject me just because of a formality of the fact that I've put a picture and disregard all my good qualities, I don't want to work for them anyways. But yeah, that's a bit like, if you're really desperate to get an internship, obviously don't do that. For me, it's not like, if I'm getting an internship or a job, I want to know that I really identify with the values of that company. And a company that would reject people based on the sole fact that they put a picture is not a company that I identify with. And then also, in a way, I'm not sure that so many companies would be worried about that, because yeah, someone can come at them and be like, oh, you hired this person just because they look pretty or something, but they can see my picture again, they can see it on my LinkedIn, and they are going to see it at the interview. So if someone were to come at them and be like, oh, you hired this girl just because she's pretty and she looks nice, etc., they're going to see me at the interview anyways. So I personally don't think it should be a big problem. But if you're worried, if anyone's worried about it, rather don't put a picture. I've personally decided to put one, and I'm not worried about not getting internships because of that. Yeah, just Arita saying on the group chat, on the chat, that Bartosz made a really good point. It's worth noting that usually the access and inclusivity checkboxes of ethnicity, nationality, etc., at the end of an application are anonymous. That is fair, but for me, you can very much tell my ethnicity and nationality from my name. So I don't take a picture, and also my gender. Like for me, you can't, with Eastern European names, of the ending of my name, you can tell that I'm coming from one of the Balkan countries, and you can tell that I'm a female. So it's not really giving that much away, really. And yeah,
Yeah, I know.
that's my
I wasn't
personal
attacking
preference
you.
for it. Yeah,
I
I'm
was
not
gonna say, just to clarify, I
I'm
wasn't
just saying
attacking
that's
you
why I've made this
because I
choice.
definitely.
But maybe for someone else, it wouldn't make sense to make the same choice. But personally, for me, it really doesn't change much, and it's just a personal preference.
I just
yeah,
want
it
to
was a
add
great
on
question.
that, actually, Ina. Like, I don't know how it is with architectural firms because I haven't applied, and also not for engineering firms, but I know for some things that I have applied to, they won't say that they don't want an image. But if you look at the regulations of how their HR works, it works on basis of being completely anonymous. So the moment that you put the picture in there, through their regulations, they have to get rid of you. Not because they explicitly mention it, but it's because they can get like lawsuits and stuff, and they don't want to do that. Not directly related to someone's CV, but it's kind of indirectly related. And in those cases, that's why I don't put my picture in either, because like you don't really know like the internal
right?
kind of regulations within the company. And that's why I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the fact that it's a CV is automatically not anonymous. Like maybe it's anonymous for like the exam or like questions or stuff, but the CV has my name, a link to my LinkedIn, which has all of my information, including picture and everything. So you can't say that adding a picture is making my CV non-anonymous. It is already not anonymous because it's got all of my information, my details, my name, my LinkedIn, etc. So it's definitely not anonymous anyways. So I don't think that's what's gonna, like, I don't think adding a picture is making it not anonymous. It's already not anonymous. That's what a CV is. It's like the story of your life. How can that be anonymous?
But I think it makes it difficult for the company's regulations, and many companies, they don't want to get into that kind of law aspect of it. So they rather be safe than sorry, and they kind of get rid of you. At least that is like how I've kind of seen it.
I mean, yeah, if you want to be safe, don't put the photo. That's the bottom line. All right. If we have any other final questions, feel free to unmute yourself now. If not, we're going to end the meeting. Right. So thank you everyone who attended. Or is there something on the group chat?
No.
Oh, yeah. Bartosz is sending a quick answer from ChatGPT.
I just quickly checked in. Yeah. Just kind of to get the idea of what it could be, because as I said, it's a risk that everyone has to take, and I don't think that there is too much anything specific that we can say, because of course, if you go to the small company, it's going to be different, but you're going to go to the massive company. So I think just everyone should take their own risks, decide on however they want to apply for it. Just be mindful of those risks and benefits of doing both things.
Yeah, that's fair enough. As long as you know why you're doing it and that you know the risks, you're welcome to add a picture. But if you want to be safe, don't add one. Yeah, right. So thank you everyone for attending. Thank you also for the interesting questions. And thank you even more to the 6 people that presented today. And we'll see you again next week on Friday, because on Wednesday it clashes with our exam. So the cover letter and recommendation letter will be on Friday next week. You'll receive an invite for it. And yeah, thank you everyone for making these workshops happen. Bye.